I covered for my younger brother when he stole $28,000 from my sister's business. Now my sister has a new phone number that none of us have. Her condo in Vaughan sold 6 months ago and she's somewhere in Victoria. Building a life that include any of us. My brother spent last November in a psychiatric hold at Trillium Health Partners, and my parents have emptied most of their RRSP paying his legal fees. The sister who could have steadied all of this, the one I betrayed, is doing just fine. I know because I checked her LinkedIn. She got promoted, she looks healthy, she has a new city and, apparently knew everything else, because we are not part of any of it. I am 34 years old. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I did and what it cost. My sister is 38. She built her physiotherapy clinic from scratch, 6 years ago. Out of a small commercial unit in Vaughan she leased it on her own. With her own credit and her own business plan. Nobody helped her. She didn't ask. That was always her way. Quietly capable in a way that made the rest of us look like we were still learning how to tie our shoes. By the time she was 35, she had 4 staff, a full client roster, and a condo she owned outright after selling her first one and rolling the equity. Our parents were proud of her in the distant way. People are proud of something they don't fully understand. My brother is 24. He finished a media arts program at Humber and has been figuring things out since graduation. He's not lazy. I want to be clear about that. He's creative, genuinely talented, and he cares about things in this intense way that burns bright and then fizzles. He moved back home to Mississauga 2 years ago after a photography contract track fell through. My parents welcomed him back with a kind of relief that told me more about their fear of losing him than about any real plan to help him get somewhere new. My sister suggested she add my brother as an authorized user on her business MasterCard. He was doing some freelance work for her, running supply pickups, grabbing equipment from suppliers in the city. It made sense on paper. She trusted him. We all trusted him. I do our family's taxes. That's the context you need. I've been the unofficial numbers person since I was 19, partly because I ended up in commercial insurance, and partly because my father's eyes glaze over the moment anyone mentions CRA. Every April, my sister handed me her books, and I'd work through them on weekends while my wife made coffee, and pretended not to notice how long it took. The March before everything fell apart, I was going through the clinic's credit card statements and I found a charge I didn't recognize. Then another. Then another. Then another. I pulled the full year and sat at the kitchen table for 40 minutes before I understood what I was seeing. $28,411. Music equipment. Camera gear. Clothing, some of it designer. A handful of Airbnb bookings in Toronto and Montreal. Restaurants I recognized because my brother had mentioned wanting to go. Over 8 months, spread out carefully enough that no single charge was enormous, but together, it was a number that would hurt. My wife came in, saw my face and asked what was wrong. I told her. I needed to think about it overnight. I didn't sleep. I ran through every possible explanation and kept arriving at the only one that made sense. In the morning I drove to my parents' house and waited until my brother woke up, which was around 11. I told him I needed to talk outside. He was hungover, or something close to it. He sat on the back porch steps and listened while I laid it out. I watched his face move through denial, brief, reflexive, and then collapse entirely. He started crying before I finished. The kind that bends you in half. He said he was going to pay it back. Said he'd been panicking for months. Said he told himself it was borrowing. That he had a contract coming through. That would cover everything. That he never meant for it to go this far. He looked exactly the way he had at 8 years old, when he broke my father's windshield with a baseball, and hid in his bedroom for 3 hours. Waiting for someone to decide what happened next. I should have called my sister that afternoon. I didn't. I told my brother he had until September. 6 months. He was going to figure out how to pay it back quietly, some arrangement with his bank or a personal loan, and my sister would never need to know. This is the only time, I said. He nodded. He promised. I drove home and told my wife it was a bookkeeping issue being sorted out, internally. She didn't push. I didn't explain. That silence between lasted a lot longer than I expected it to. April became May. May became summer. My brother got a part-time job at a camera store on Huron, Ontario. He was paying back maybe $300 a month, which meant at that rate it would take him 8 years, not 6 months, and I knew it. I told myself he was trying. My sister flagged the discrepancy herself in July. She had a new accountant. A proper one. She'd hired to handle the clinic's growth. He found it in his first full review, and presented it to her in a folder with highlighted statements, and a handwritten note listing the dates and amounts. She called me the same evening. I heard it in her voice before she said a word. That particular flatness she did sit particular flat shit when she's already processed something all the way through, and is now just delivering the information. She said she knew what had happened. She said there was going to be a family meeting on Saturday at our parents' house. Will you be there? She asked. Of course. She hung up. The 3 days between that call and Saturday were the worst of my life up to that point. I told my brother. He went gray. He said he needed to talk to her before Saturday. And I said I didn't think that was a good idea. And we sat in silence in my parents' kitchen. While my mother made tea nobody wanted and pretended she didn't know something was wrong. Saturday, my sister walked in carrying nothing. No bag, no folder, no papers. She sat at the dining table in the chair she always took and waited for us to settle. My parents across from her, my brother beside me, my wife at home because I hadn't told her this was happening. My sister looked at each of us in turn, then at my brother. I know you used the card, she said. My brother opened his mouth. I'm not asking you to explain it right now. She looked at me. Did you know before I told you? My parents both looked at me. 4 people looking at one person, and I felt the exact weight of it. Pressing down through the chair into the floor. Yes, I said. The room went so quiet. I could hear the neighbor's lawnmower 3 houses down. My mother put her hand over her mouth. My sister didn't flinch. How long? Since March. She nodded. Like I'd confirmed something she'd already suspected. She looked back at my brother. I'm going to speak with my lawyer on Monday about how to handle the financial side. I'd prefer to keep this out of a courtroom if there's a reasonable option. But that's not guaranteed. She stood up. My father stood too. Now hold on. This is family. We handle family things as a family. He's going to pay you back every cent, aren't you? He looked at my brother who nodded vigorously. Blood doesn't go to a lawyer. That's not how we do things. My sister looked at our father for a moment. You raised him to believe family absorbs whatever he does. That's not his fault. And it's not mine to fix. She picked up her keys from the table where she'd set them. When she came in. I'll be in touch through my lawyer. If there's anything requiring a family response. Otherwise, I think we've covered what needed to be said. She left. I watched her through the dining room window as she walked to her car. She didn't rush, she didn't look back. My father said she just needed time to cool off. My mother said we should give her a few days, maybe a week. My brother said he would make this right. He swore it on everything. And then broke down again at the table, while my mother put her arms around him. I drove home and told my wife everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she set down her coffee mug and looked out the window for a long time before she said anything. You should have called your sister in March, she said. I know. You chose your brother. I know. We didn't talk about it again that night. But it was there between us for weeks afterward, sitting underneath every other conversation. Like a stone at the bottom of shallow water. The first few days, no one reached out to my sister. My parents thought she needed space. I thought she was talking to her lawyer. My brother kept his phone face up on the kitchen table all day, waiting for it to light up with her name. It didn't. 2 weeks later my mother tried calling. Straight to voicemail, she texted. Nothing, I tried from my number, nothing, my brother tried and the message didn't deliver at all. Her number had been disconnected. I found out through a family friend, the kind of news that travels sideways before it reaches you directly, that my sister had removed both of my parents as beneficiaries on her life insurance policy, and her RRSP. Quietly, precisely, like she'd been planning it for longer than any of us realized. I told my parents. My mother cried. My father said there had to be a mistake. You don't just do that. That's not how family works. He tried calling her clinic. The receptionist was polite and carefully vague. My sister wasn't available. There was no message she could pass along in this case. My father asked why. The receptionist apologized. That was the last time any of us spoke to someone who spoke to her regularly. Then the listing appeared. I drove past her building out of habit. The way you check on something without admitting to yourself that you're checking it. The for sale sign was in the lobby window. Realtor's name, a QR code, a price that made my stomach drop for a different reason than I expected. Not because it was high, though it was, but because she was actually leaving. My wife looked up the listing when I told her. It sold in 11 days. I didn't find out where she went for 2 more months. In the meantime, my brother was deteriorating. The legal side resolved quietly. My sister's lawyer sent a demand letter. My parents paid a portion of the amount out of their savings. As a gesture, my brother signed a repayment agreement for the rest. There were no criminal charges. She chose not to press them. I've thought about that decision a great deal since. I think she made it for her own reasons. Not out of kindness toward him. But the agreement didn't fix what was happening inside my brother. He quit the camera store job in September. He stopped eating regular meals. My parents walked around him carefully, the way you walk around something fragile. Which he was, but the kind of fragile that builds up when you've never once been allowed to fully carry what you've broken. October. He was driving back from a bar on a Tuesday night, a Tuesday which tells you something about where he was, and he went off Burnhamthorpe just past Confederation. He wasn't going fast. He hit the concrete median barrier. No other cars involved. Not wearing his seatbelt. His blood alcohol was 0.1. The call came to my parents' house at 2 a.m. My father phoned me. I drove to Credit Valley Hospital in the dark. One hand on the wheel, the other pressed flat against my thigh to stop it from shaking. 3 broken ribs. A partially collapsed lung. Deep lacerations from the dashboard across his forearm and jaw. And when the sedation wore off enough that he could look at me standing at the foot of his bed, he said something I've replayed every day since. I kept thinking she'd come back, he said. I kept thinking I'd fix it somehow. And then I realized she made a real decision. She thought it all the way through first. And she just left. He stopped. Nothing I do matters now because I already had my chance. He didn't say he was trying to crash. He didn't say he wasn't. He said he hadn't cared much either way. My parents sat in that waiting room for 9 hours. Antiseptic smell, recycled air, bad coffee from a machine in the corner. At some point my mother leaned toward me and said something quietly. Like she'd been circling it for months and finally came to land. We asked her to hold the space while we kept him comfortable. She said. We never asked him to hold anything. My father didn't say anything. But he reached over and took her hand. We needed to tell my sister. I paid a private investigator $600, which felt both absurd and entirely necessary. 3 days later, Victoria, British Columbia. A clinic in James Bay, a rental in Fernwood. New number, doing well by all visible evidence. I dialed with my hands cold, the way they get, before something with no good outcome. She answered. So. Her voice was steady, unsurprised. I told her about my brother. The accident, the hospital, the ribs, the lung. I told her he was stable. I told her he'd been thinking about her. I asked if she would call him. A pause. Not long. Is he going to? Sir. Yes. Then there's nothing I need to do. He's your brother. He was. The correction was quiet and final. And you were someone I trusted with my books every April for 6 years. I'm still deciding which of those things hurts more to think about. I didn't have an answer to that. I'm not angry, she said. I want you to understand that. I made a decision about what I needed and what I was no longer willing to absorb, and I carried it out. That's all this is. Mom and Dad need. I know what they need. They needed to hold him responsible instead of holding him up. It's too late for that now. Pause. A pause. Tell my brother I hope he recovers. Tell Mom and Dad I'm fine. Don't call this number again. She was gone. When I redialed, it said the number wasn't accepting calls from mine. My father flew to Victoria 3 weeks later. He's 68 years old, and he flew across the country alone on a Wednesday morning and sat outside the clinic she worked at for 3 hours in the November cold. He finally saw her when she left for the evening. When she saw him on the sidewalk. You shouldn't have come, she said. He told her about my brother, about her mother, about missing her at Thanksgiving, about the house feeling like a question with no answer. His voice shook. He is not a man who does that easily or often. She listened without walking away. My father told me later that for one moment, he thought he saw something move in her face. A flicker. He thought it might be the opening he'd flown across the country to find. You asked me to be quiet, she said. All of you did, in different ways, so I was quiet. I handled everything quietly. The policies, the condo, the move. I didn't make a scene. I didn't put anything on the internet. I gave you exactly what you asked for, a beat. You wanted me to protect the family's peace. I removed myself from it so the peace could hold. That's what protection looks like. It just turned out you meant protect him, not protect me. She adjusted her bag. Tell my brother I hope he's okay. Tell Mom to stop worrying about me. I genuinely mean that. I'm fine. She looked at my father for one more second. Don't come back here. She walked down the street and turned a corner and that was it. My father stood on a Victoria sidewalk watching his daughter disappear between buildings. He flew back the next morning. He looked smaller, walking through the arrivals doors than he had when he left. I drove him home without turning the radio on. My brother came home from the hospital with a physiotherapy schedule and bail conditions, and a referral to a psychiatrist at St. Joseph's. He moved back into his old bedroom at my parents' place. He was quieter. Heavier in a way that had nothing to do with weight. One evening, about 2 months after the accident, he showed me her LinkedIn on his phone. Clinical director at the Victoria Clinic now. A photo from a staff event. She was smiling, new haircut. She looked like someone who had made a decision and was not second-guessing any part of it. She's fine, my brother said. He wasn't crying. That was somehow worse. She's actually fine without us. Yeah, I said. Good. He meant it completely and it took me a moment to absorb that. I'm glad she's okay, I mean it. I just wish. He stopped. We both knew how that sentence ended. My parents and I wrote her a letter. All three of us contributed to it. We did not write it to ask her to come back. We were honest enough with ourselves by then to understand that was no longer on the table. We wrote it to say that we finally saw what we'd done, that we understood now what it means to protect someone in the wrong direction. That we were sorry in ways that required nothing from her in return. We sent it care of the Victoria Clinic in case the new address didn't reach her. It was never returned, no response either. She received it, read it, and chose silence. That hurt more than any words she could have sent it back. We spent last Christmas renting a place on the lakeshore in Port Cret because nobody wanted to sit in the Mississauga house, feeling the particular weight of a chair that nobody was sitting in. My wife set the table for 5. My mother kept the conversation moving in the way she always has, filling silence, because she has never quite trusted it. My father took photos on his phone, but I noticed afterward that he didn't change his wallpaper. My brother is sober now. Genuinely. He's in therapy twice a week, and he's landed a real contract. Product photography, for an outdoor gear company, invoiced properly, the kind of work he always should have been doing. He told me recently that the hardest part isn't the guilt. He's learning to sit with the guilt. The hardest part is knowing he had a sister who loved him exactly as he was. Never asked him to be more successful or more stable. Only asked him not to take from her. And he couldn't manage that one thing. I check her LinkedIn about once a month. I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe just to know she's out there, still okay, still building. She bought a clinic of her own in Saanich. I found it in a neighborhood paper that quoted her as a local business owner. Hers entirely this time. Same discipline, same precision, different city. She's doing what she's always done. Just without us in it. My wife asked me last spring, after everything had settled into something livable, what I would do differently. I thought about it honestly before answering. I would have called my sister the next evening I found those credit card statements. Without going to my brother first. Without giving him the window to cry his way into another second chance. I would have let her decide what happened next. Instead of deciding for her that she didn't need to know. I told myself I was protecting the family. I was protecting my brother's comfort. There's a difference. And I understood it too late to matter. You don't protect someone by absorbing the cost on their behalf and calling it love. You don't protect a family by asking the strongest person in it to carry what the weakest one refuses to pick up. My sister understood this, apparently had understood it for some time. Before the rest of us got anywhere near it, she stepped back. Let the weight land where it belonged. And then she built something clean somewhere else. Without us, which turned out to be entirely possible for her. Even if it still doesn't feel possible to us that it could be. There is a photo on my parents' fridge, from a cottage trip in the Kawarthas, 6 or 7 years ago. My sister has her arm around my brother. She's laughing at something off camera, head tipped back. He's grinning the way he used to before the weight of what he became settled in. My father walks past it every day. He hasn't taken it down. She hasn't come back to replace it with anything real. This is what we are now. A family with a specific absence at its center. One we built ourselves, one quiet decision at a time. Beginning the morning I sat at a kitchen table with $28,000 of damage in front of me and chose to drive to my brother instead of calling my sister. We got the silence we asked for. It just turned out she was the one holding the house together. And when she left, she took that with her too.